What is the first tip? Well, that's in shopping your greens. Going out to the farmer's market or going to the grocery store and buying greens that will hold up when making a salad. So I have a few options here in front of me. These are sturdy, crisp greens and they'll last a little bit. So when you build your salad, they won't get soggy and limp. Examples of crisp greens, this is romaine here, which is nice and sturdy. I have Bibb lettuce here. Endive, which is a tiny bit bitter, but really crisp and crunchy, is really great. Radicchio, Treviso, those are other members of this family here, would be fantastic. And kale. So this is curly kale here, but you could also use Tuscan kale. Anything that's kind of sturdy and crisp works really well in making salads. So my preference would be to use these crisp, crunchy greens, and that's the first tip in making a crisp, delicious salads. The second is in washing and thoroughly drying your greens. Now, I have here a mixture of Bibb lettuce and romaine, and I'm just washing them in a big bowl of water here. Now, if you bring your salad greens home from the farmer's market or the supermarket and you notice that they're a little limp, they're slightly wizened from heat, they're kind of absent of moisture, if you plunge them, pick them apart, cut them into the pieces you would like ultimately, and throw them in a bowl of ice water. What will happen is the water will rehydrate and the cold ice will help to crisp up the greens nicely, and they should come back in probably about a half an hour in that mixture of ice and water. So I'm using a salad spinner today. If you guys don't have one of these at home, make sure you invest in one, especially if you love eating salads. They're probably the most important tool in making salads, because what they do is they get off all of the water from the greens. You might be saying, is it really that important to have dry salad greens? And the answer is yes, because if you have wet salad greens, what's gonna happen is that dressing that you put on is going to immediately slip right off of the lettuce leaves. And so you're gonna have to use much more salad dressing or vinaigrette to flavor your salad, and ultimately the more liquids that you use, the soggier salad's going to get. So having thoroughly dried greens is very important, and that's step number 2. Now, giving this a little bit of a check here, you can see how much water actually comes off of the greens. If you do this a few times, your lettuce should be nice and crisp and really nice and dry. So while this is hanging out here, I'm gonna start on tip number 3. Tip number 3 is making a very flavorful salad dressing. Oftentimes recipes will tell you that you should use 1 part of vinegar or acid and 3 parts of oil. I typically prefer to do a higher ratio of vinegar because it has more flavor and more bite. I have some white wine vinegar here. This is about 1/4 cup of white wine vinegar. You could use sherry vinegar. Sherry vinegar is a very flavorful vinegar. Again, more flavor, the less you need to use. I'm adding about a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and Dijon mustard is a really great ingredient to have on hand, not only for sandwiches, but in so many different salad dressings. It's extremely useful. Now, you could use whole grain mustard. That would be great here. If you love honey mustard, that would be fantastic. Any type of mustard you have, even a little bit of mayonnaise, what it does is it amps up the flavor. It creates an emulsification, and that emulsification will help the vinaigrette stick to the dry lettuce leaves. So into my vinegar and Dijon mixture here, I'm gonna add a good amount of salt. Now, I'm gonna do 2 hefty pinches here, and you might think, wow, for this little quantity of vinegar and mustard, that's a lot of salt, but what you're really doing is that salt needs to flavor all of those lettuce leaves. So be generous, and same thing with pepper. I'm gonna add 2 large pinches of freshly ground pepper here. Now, if you wanted to add spice or if you wanted to add herbs, you could certainly do that. That would be fantastic and also give you more flavor. And again, more flavor, the less dressing you need to use, and the less weight on your lettuce leaves, which will make it soggy. Now, I'm gonna add a teeny bit of sugar here, just a small pinch. If you were using honey mustard, you don't need to use sugar. You could even add a little bit of honey if you'd like, or even a tiny bit of maple syrup would be really nice. So I'm gonna whisk these ingredients together. What you're really looking to do in this step is to dissolve the salt slightly in the vinegar. Mix these ingredients up, and then drizzle in your olive oil. I'm really only going to use maybe 1/3 of a cup to 1/2 of a cup of olive oil. And when you're making vinaigrettes and when you're buying olive oil for your kitchen, you want to make sure that you have an olive oil that's really great for cooking, so something with maybe a little bit more of a neutral flavor to it. You should also have on hand a more flavorful olive oil for things like salad dressings like this, and also for finishing things, drizzling it over wonderful mozzarella cheese. Really flavorful olive oil will go a long way because you don't need to use that much of it. So my vinaigrette's done, and now the 4th step in making a perfectly crisp, flavorful salad is in tossing the salad together. You might not have a giant bowl like this at home, but if you're serious about your salads, you should invest in one. This is a wide, shallow bowl, and this is a real trick here. This is what everybody does in restaurants. A wide, shallow bowl that you can toss your salad in will help keep it nice and crisp, and you won't bruise the lettuces, and you won't overdress them as well. And you might be saying, what? Why does this matter? Well, a wide bowl, you have more surface area. And what it's not doing is the lettuce leaves aren't piled up on top of each other in a narrow, deep vessel. So you don't have to toss the lettuce as much. You just gently have to do it. And your vinaigrette here can go right around the outside of the bowl. Use a few spoonfuls. I'm going to use 2 here, maybe 2 and a little bit more. And now you could use your hands if you wanted to do that. You could use a pair of tongs. I'm gonna just use this spoon right here, and I'm gonna gently fold from the underside and around, flipping the leaves. And it really doesn't take much to toss the lettuce with the vinaigrette. In, what is that, a matter of a few minutes here, you have a wonderful, crisp, bright, light salad that is not soggy at all. Now guys, if you remember those 4 tips, you will have success each and every time you make a salad at home. And just to show you guys how crisp this is, I'm gonna give it the crunch test. I mean, you can hear it. It's crisp, it's crunchy, it's really flavorful. There you go, guys. Enjoy.